The year was the far future. Earth was no longer safe. The blue planet had become a battlefield, caught in the fire of a galactic empire that wanted nothing less than total control. For years, the Empire's fleets had spread across the stars, like a storm. They crushed worlds, burned cities, and broke armies. Earth was only one world among thousands, but it was stubborn. It fought back. It refused to kneel, and among those who fought was a man named Captain Arcane. He was not the strongest soldier. He was not the most famous hero. But he was fearless. He led his unit into battles that others would never dare to fight. His name was whispered by soldiers in the trenches, a name that gave them courage when all hope seemed lost. But one day, his luck ended. In a brutal clash above a dying world, Kane's ship was surrounded. His men were slaughtered, his weapons burned away, and he was taken. The Empire did not kill him. Death would have been too easy. Instead, they sent him to a place worse than death. Prison world. It's hidden in the black void of space. No one escaped from that place. Time passed. Days became months. Months became years. On Earth, people whispered about him. At first, they prayed for his return. Then, as the years dragged on, their hope faded. Some said he was dead. Some said he had been executed. Others simply forgot. His name, 10 long years, 10 years of silence. But Kane was not dead. He lived in the shadows of the prison world, a place where broken souls were sent to rot. The ground was black stone. The sky was endless night. Screams echoed in the distance. And the guards' machines of steel and fire never slept. Kane should have broken. He should have fallen to despair like the others. But he did not. He watched. He listened. He waited. And in that waiting, he discovered something strange. He was not alone. The prison did not only hold humans, it held captives from across the galaxy, beings of shapes and colors no human eye had ever seen. Some had claws, some had wings, some had eyes that glowed like fire. They were enemies of the Empire, locked away to be forgotten. At first they hated Kane. To them, humans were weak. To them, Kane was just another broken prisoner, another victim. But Kane was different. He did not bow. He did not beg. Every day he stood tall even as chains cut into his skin. Every time the guards tried to crush him, he rose again.
Broken.
Bones, torn flesh, it did not matter. Kane would not kneel, and the aliens watched. One by one, they began to whisper to him. Their voices were low, filled with secrets and knowledge. They spoke of things Kane had never heard: ancient sciences, hidden powers, forgotten weapons, buried in the dark corners of the galaxy. He listened. He learned. What was once a man became something more. Kane's eyes grew colder. His mind grew sharper. His spirit turned into iron. 10 years of pain shaped him to a weapon sharper than any blade. The Empire believed they had buried him. They believed the prison would erase him. They were wrong. Kane was not just surviving. He was preparing. And he was not alone anymore. The alien captives who once hated him now looked at him with respect. They began to gather around him. Broken. Warriors, strange creatures, outcasts from 100 worlds, they whispered his name in the darkness like a secret flame. Captain Kane. The human who refused to die. The human who would one day rise in that forgotten prison. A legend was born, and though Earth believed he was gone forever, Kane was waiting, watching, planning. He was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming something. It's far more dangerous. And when the day came that he returned to the stars, he would not return alone. 10 years had passed since Captain Eric Kane was taken. On Earth, the war had not ended. It had only grown worse. The Galactic Empire moved like a shadow across the stars. Their fleets were endless, their armies countless. Every battle Earth fought was another wound, another scar. The cities of Earth no longer shined with lights. Instead, smoke rose from their ruins. Skyscrapers stood broken. Oceans burned with oil and fire. The skies were filled with warships that blocked the sun. The people still lived, but they did not live free. Governments fell apart. Nations collapsed. What remained of humanity gathered? Under one banner, the Terran Defense Command. But even united, they were weak compared to the Empire. The leaders of Earth sat in dark rooms, surrounded by maps filled with red lines. Each red line was another territory lost, another base destroyed, another fleet gone. Hope was thin, and in that hopelessness, Eric Kane's name faded. Some still remembered him. Old soldiers whispered about him in the barracks, telling young recruits of the fearless captain who once fought for Earth. They told stories of his bravery, stories of how he never surrendered. But even they knew the truth. Kane was gone, dead. Forgotten 10 years was a lifetime in war now. Earth was on the edge of its final fall. The Empire's main fleet was gathering beyond the outer colonies.
And
billions of lives had already been lost. Entire planets had burned. Now the Empire prepared to crush Earth itself, once and for all, and Earth knew it could not win. The people saw it in the empty food stores, in the broken fleets, in the silence of the night skies. Even children knew. They looked up at the stars and whispered the question no one wanted to ask: how long until the end? But then, something strange happened. At first, it was only a signal, a strange pulse caught by deep space scanners. It was faint, like a heartbeat in the void. The technicians thought it was an error, a ghost signal from old satellites. But then it grew stronger, louder, closer. Something was coming. At Terran command, alarms blared. Generals rushed to war tables. Fleets were called to readiness. Everyone believed the same thing. The Empire had arrived. Fear spread like fire. Families ran to shelters. Soldiers prepared for a battle they knew they could not win. But the signal was wrong. The ships that entered the system did not belong to the Empire. Their shapes were alien long, sharp, built from strange metals that shimmered in colors Earth had never seen. Engines glowed like suns, weapons bristled with power, and the fleet moved with precision, like hunters closing in on prey. The commanders on Earth were silent. No one recognized the fleet. No one knew who they were, and then a voice broke through the coms. A voice the world had not heard in 10 years. A voice they thought was dead. "This is Captain Eric Kane," it said cold. Strong, unbroken. For a moment no one spoke. No one breathed. Generals looked at each other in shock. Soldiers froze in disbelief. The name they thought lost to time now thundered across their screens. But the shock did not end there, because Kane was not alone. Behind him stretched a fleet hundreds of alien ships, flying in formation like an army ready for war, ships from worlds Earth had never seen. Armies from species Earth had once called enemies. They were not the Empire. They were something new, and they followed Kane, the same man who had been a prisoner for 10 years. The same man Earth believed dead. The same man who now spoke with a voice that carried both fire and steel. "Earth," he said, "you are not alone anymore." With those words, hope returned, hope mixed with fear. Because if Kane had returned, if he truly commanded this fleet, then Earth's final stand was about to begin. The fleets of Earth waited in silence. From the command stations on the ground to the ships orbiting above the ruined planet, all eyes stared at the strange armada that had just entered the system. No one trusted it. No one understood it. Alien ships of strange design moved in perfect formation, surrounding Earth's space like a net. They were larger than anything Earth had ever built. Their armor was jagged, their weapons glowed with unknown energy, and their engines burned with colors that made even veteran captains nervous. Too many, it looked less like an ally, more like an invasion. But then came the voice. It was impossible. It was unbelievable. "This is Captain Eric Kane." The words echoed through every speaker, every ship, every base on Earth. Soldiers froze at their posts. Civilians in shelters raised their heads in shock. Even the hardened generals of Terran command went pale. The name was a ghost. It's a memory, but here it was alive. Eric Kane, the soldier lost a decade ago. The man captured, tortured, and believed dead. His voice was calm, cold, steady. It was the voice of a man who had walked through hell and come back. For a moment, no one believed it. Some thought it was a trick, an enemy deception. But then the cameras locked on. The screens flickered with static hand, then showed his face. It was him. Older. Harder. His once young eyes were now sharp and steel gray. Scars ran across his skin like maps of suffering. His uniform was torn and patched with pieces of alien armor. But it was him. Kane alive. And he was not alone. Behind him stood figures no human had ever seen before. Alien warriors of many shapes and sizes filled the screen's, towering insect-like soldiers with razor claws. Winged creatures with glowing eyes, armored. Beasts whose voices rumbled like thunder. They stood not as prisoners, not as slaves, but as soldiers. And they stood behind Kane like an army behind a commander. The generals on Earth whispered among themselves. Are they enemies? Why are they here? Why do they follow him? Kane answered before anyone could ask. 10 years ago, he said, I was taken. I was locked away in the Empire's darkest prison. They wanted to break me. They wanted to erase me. But they failed, because I was not the only prisoner. In the shadows of that place, I found others. I sound others. I sound broken by the same enemy. Enemies of the Empire. Enemies who hated each other. Enemies who had no reason to fight together. Paused. His voice grew sharper, colder. I gave them a reason. The camera cut to the alien fleet outside, hundreds of ships bristling with weapons. The sight shook Earth's soldiers to their core. These are not slaves, Kane continued. These are warriors. Warriors who were once broken, but now united. Together, we are not prisoners. Together, we are vengeance. The words sent a chill through every listener. Some felt hope, others felt fear. In the war rooms of Terran Command, debates erupted. He has returned, one general shouted. He has brought allies. We can win now. No, another hissed. Look at him. He commands them, not us. What if he has come to conquer? But before the arguments could end, Kane's fleet moved closer. The sky above Earth darkened as alien ships formed ranks above the planet. Blotting out the stars, the people below stared upward in awe and terror. Was this salvation or invasion? Kane spoke once more, his voice thundering like a war drum. Earth is on the edge. I have seen its suffering. I have heard its cries even from across the stars. But now the time of weakness is over. The Empire believes Earth is broken. They believe humanity is alone. They believe we will kneel. His eyes hardened. They are wrong. The last words were spoken with fire. When the Empire comes, Earth will not stand alone. My army will fight. My fleet will burn the stars if we must. This is no longer just Earth's war, it is our war. And I swear to you we will win. The broadcast ended. The world was left in silence. In that silence, fear and hope clashed like fire and ice. Some cheered. Some trembled. No one knew if Kane had returned as a savior or as something else. But one thing was certain. Earth's story had changed. The prisoner had returned. The legend had risen. And now, the final war was coming. Before Kane's return to Earth, before the fleet followed his command, there was the prison. A place built not for life but for despair. It was called Blackreach by its guards, a world where the Empire sent the broken and the forgotten. Few even knew it existed. Those who entered never returned. When Kane first arrived there, he was thrown into a pit of stone and metal, chained like an animal. Around him, other prisoners watched with cold, lifeless eyes. They had been there for years, maybe centuries. They had no hope left. At first, Kane was nothing to them, just another human, weak and temporary. But Kane was different. He did not bend. He did not cry. Every time the guards beat him, he stood again. Every time they starved him, he survived. The chains dug into his flesh, but he never bowed, and the others began to notice. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy. Tall reptilian warriors with scales like iron, insect-like soldiers with arms sharp as blades, wolf-like hunters with glowing eyes. Even strange, floating beings made of light, Different species, different enemies. None trusted each other. None spoke without hatred. But slowly, one by one, they began to whisper to Cain. The first was a scarred reptilian captain named Dravik. He had once commanded fleets larger than Earth's entire navy, but the Empire crushed him. "Why do you keep standing, human?" he asked, his voice low. Cain's answer was simple: "Because if I fall, they win." The word spread like fire. In the dark, others came to him. Insectoid queen whose wings had been torn away. A wolf warrior who had once hunted the Empire's soldiers for sport. Even prisoners who could not speak still gathered near him as if his will alone gave them strength. 4 years, Cain listened. He learned their languages. He heard their stories of lost worlds, burned cities, and fallen empires. Each race had fought alone. Each had been crushed. The Empire had broken them one by one. But Cain saw something the others could not. They wanted us separate, told them. They wanted us divided. Alone we fall, together we rise. First, they mocked him. Aliens who had hated each other for generations could not imagine unity. But Cain did not stop. He trained with them. He bled with them. He suffered with them. And in time, their hatred turned to respect. One night, when the guards dragged Cain into the pits for execution, something happened. The insectoid queen attacked the guards with her claws. The reptilian captain tore chains from his wrists. The wolf warrior howled, leading others into the fight. For the first time in Blackreach's history, the prisoners fought as one. The rebellion failed. The guards crushed them brutally. Many died. Cain himself was beaten nearly to death. But something had changed forever. The prisoners had tasted unity, and they would not forget. Year after year, Cain became their center. He was not just human anymore. He was their symbol. He endured when no one else could. He planned when others gave up. He spoke when silence seemed easier. 10 years shaped him into more than a soldier. He became a commander. And then, the chance came. A supply convoy arrived at Blackreach. For the first time in decades, the prison's defenses were weak. Cain seized the moment. With Dravik and the others at his side, he led the uprising again, but this time they were ready. They moved. Like an army, not prisoners. They tore through guards, seized ships, and broke the chains that had bound them for so long. The prison burned as they rose from its ashes. When the fleet escaped Blackreach, Cain stood at its center. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a leader of worlds. Dravik swore loyalty to him. The insectoid queen bowed her head. The wolf warrior called him Alpha. Even those who once hated humans now followed his command. Not because Cain forced them, not because they feared him, but because he had given them something no empire ever could: hope. And so the alliance was born. A fleet of broken races, a brotherhood of the forgotten, a unity forged in chains and fire. At its heart stood one monarch, Cain. And when he turned his eyes back toward Earth, they followed, not as slaves, not as servants, but as warriors of a new army. The army of the silent prisoner, the army that would shake the stars. The Empire did not wait long. When word spread that Cain had returned, when whispers of an alien fleet allied with Earth reached their commanders, the Empire moved with fury. They came with fire. The first signs were in the outer colonies. Small listening posts vanished, burned to ash in seconds. Refugee convoys were torn apart by destroyers. Space itself seemed to darken as the Empire's fleet gathered like a storm. And then, they came for Earth. It started with shadows. From the far edge of the system, black shapes appeared against the stars. At first, they looked small. But as they drew closer, they grew massive ships, miles long, bristling with weapons. The fleet stretched farther than human eyes could see. They came in silence, cold and merciless. Alarms screamed across Earth's defenses. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Fleets scrambled into orbit. Families were herded into bunkers as the skies turned red with warning lights. The Empire had arrived, and this time were not here to conquer. They were here to erase. Earth's generals stared at their screens in horror. Their fleets were small, their weapons weak. Even with Kane's return, they knew the truth. Earth could not fight this alone, but Kane was not afraid. From the bridge of his flagshipper, black alien warship, larger than anything Earth had ever built, he watched the Empire's fleet spread. Across the system, his scarred hands rested calmly on the command table. Around him stood his alien commanders, Dravik the reptilian, the insectoid queen, the wolf warrior with burning eyes. All waited for his word. Kane spoke quietly, but his voice carried power. Today the Empire learns we are not broken. Today, Earth fights back. And with a single command, his fleet moved. The alien armada surged forward like predators unleashed. Ships twisted into strange formations, their engines glowing with energy unknown to humans. Beams of light cut through the void. Spinning blades of plasma tore into enemy shields. The Empire was caught by surprise. They had expected Earth's broken fleets. They had not expected this alien warships united under a human commander. The battle began in fire. Earth's fleets fought beside Kane's armada. Human ships, small and fragile compared to the alien giants, darted between enemy lines, striking with missiles and railguns. Alien ships roared like beasts, their weapons tearing through Imperial destroyers. Together, they fought as one. But the Empire did not falter. Their war machines were endless. For every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. Their dreadnoughts advanced, like mountains of steel, unleashing storms of fire that shattered human vessels in seconds. Whole squadrons vanished in burning light. On the ground, people looked to the sky and saw hell. Red fire streaked across the heavens as ships exploded. The earth trembled with shockwaves. For civilians in bunkers, it was like watching the end of the world, and still Kane fought. He stood at the center of the storm, his voice echoing across, comes guiding both human and alien alike. "Hold the line," he commanded. "Strike their engines. Do not let them through." His fleet obeyed without question. The reptilian ships formed a wall, taking the brunt of the Empire's fire. Insectoid swarms darted in and out, slashing enemy hulls like knives. Human frigates followed behind, finishing what the others began. For hours, the battle raged, but Earth was bleeding. Every victory cost lives. Every enemy ship destroyed meant 3 human ships lost. The Empire pressed harder, pushing closer and closer to Earth's skies. In the war rooms below, Earth's generals whispered in fear. "They are too many. We can't hold. This is the end." But Kane's eyes never wavered. He had spent 10 years in darkness. He had suffered chains, fire, and torment. This battle was not the end. This battle was only the beginning. His flagship surged forward, crashing into the center of the Empire's fleet. Weapons blazed, shields screamed. Kane himself stood at the front of the command deck, watching as enemy ships broke against his assault. "Earth will not fall today," he growled. "Not while I still breathe." The Empire fought with fury. Kane fought with vengeance, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The battle above Earth raged on. Kane's fleet clashed with the Empire, fire and steel filling the skies. Human and alien ships fought side by side, bleeding together for survival. To the soldiers in space, Kane was a savior. To the people on the ground, he was a legend returned. Hope, for the first time in years, burned in their hearts, but not everyone saw him that way. Far below, deep inside Terran Command, a different battle was taking place. The leaders of Earth sat in a dark chamber, watching the war unfold on giant screens. Their faces were pale, their voices sharp with fear. Not fear of the Empire, but fear of Kane. "Look at him," one general whispered. "He commands hundreds of alien warships, gives orders, and they obey without question." "He is dangerous," another replied. "It's more dangerous than the Empire itself." The Supreme Chancellor leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "For 10 years, we believed him dead. Now he returns not as a soldier of Earth, but as a warlord of aliens. Tell me, who truly commands Earth now? Us, or him?" Silence fell over the chamber. The truth was clear. In the eyes of the people, Cain was already more than their leaders. His words carried more weight than theirs. His fleet was stronger than their armies. If Cain wanted, he could turn his ships against Earth, and who could stop him? Fear began to spread. Some called for gratitude. Without Cain, we would already be ash, one minister argued. He has saved us. We should fight beside him, not against him. But the Chancellor shook his head. A man who can unite aliens against the Empire can also unite them against Earth, if he wins this war. What stops him from taking control? From becoming our conqueror? The room fell silent again, and then quietly, a decision was made. They would not let Cain rise higher. They would not let Earth fall into the hands of its own savior. A plan was born in whispers, while Cain fought. Above, bleeding for Earth, his own people began to sharpen their knives. Above, the battle grew worse. The Empire pushed harder, sending waves of destroyers into the heart of Cain's fleet. Ships exploded in fire, debris raining down like meteors. On Cain's flagship, the bridge shook with every impact. Dravik roared orders to reptilian squadrons. The insectoid queen sent swarms to cut through enemy engines. Human frigates darted between giants, striking weak points. But Cain felt something else. A shadow. A silence. Something hidden. He had fought too long to ignore instinct. An instinct told him that danger did not only come from the Empire. On Earth, the betrayal began. Secret messages were sent. Covert teams were formed. Hidden order was given to Earth's elite forces. When the time comes, eliminate Captain Eric Cain. They would not strike in open battle. They would not dare. Instead, they waited, watching, searching for the perfect moment. To the world, they smiled. To the soldiers, they spoke of unity. But behind closed doors, their fear grew, because to them, Cain was not a hero. He was a threat. Back in orbit, Cain stood at the command deck, eyes locked on the enemy dreadnoughts pressing forward. His voice was steady, his presence unshaken. Push their flank, he ordered. Draw them into crossfire. The fleet obeyed, moving like one body, one mind. The Empire reeled under the counterattack. For a moment, it seemed victory was near, but Cain's thoughts were elsewhere, he remembered. Earth. He remembered the leaders who once sent soldiers like him to die while they sat in safety. He remembered their fear, their hesitation, their weakness. Knew them too well, and he wondered, when this war is over, will they thank me or will they fear me? The answer, though Cain did not yet know, was already being written in secret. His greatest enemy was not just the Empire. It was the people he had returned to save, and soon the betrayal would begin. The Empire had been humiliated. For the first time in centuries, their fleets had met resistance strong enough to wound them. A single human, once a forgotten prisoner, had turned their order of conquest into chaos. They would not forgive. They would not retreat. They gathered everything. From distant sectors, they called dreadnoughts. From hidden shipyards, they summoned carriers. From slave worlds, they forced millions of soldiers into service. It was not a fleet. It was not an army. It was a storm. The largest armada the Empire had ever sent now moved toward one small blue world. Earth from the command deck of his flagship, Cain watched the reports come in. The images of the approaching fleet filled the screen's rows upon rows of warships, blotting out the stars, their weapons glowing like suns. Even as alien commanders went silent, Dravik, the reptilian warrior, finally spoke. His deep voice rumbled. I have fought the Empire all my life. I have never seen them send so much. For one world, the insectoid queen hissed softly. They do not come to conquer, they come to erase. Cain's eyes narrowed. It expected this. He knew the Empire would not let his rebellion live. And yet, even he felt the weight of what was coming. It would not just be a battle, it would be the final war. On Earth, panic spread. Civilians crowded into bunkers. Soldiers stood ready there, hands shaking as they loaded weapons. The skies above glowed red with warning lights. Every radio, every screen, every street echoed with one truth. The Empire is coming. But among the fear, there was also something new, something that had not existed for years. Hope the people remembered the voice of Cain. They remembered the fleet he had brought, the promise he had made. Earth is not alone. Those words burned like fire in their hearts, and so they waited, not to surrender, but to fight. When the Empire arrived, the stars disappeared. The sky turned black with ships. Their armada stretched from horizon to horizon, filling the system with firepower greater than anything Earth could imagine. It was not war, it was judgment. Cain stood at the front of his bridge, his scarred face lit by the glow of enemy engines. Around him, his fleet prepared. Alien ships hummed with power. Human frigates tightened formation. Commanders whispered silent prayers. Cain did not pray. He gave orders, formed the shield wall. Humans behind the reptiles. Insectoids on the flanks. Wolf squadrons prepare for boarding runs. Every ship has a place. Every ship has a purpose. The fleets moved like one. The Empire advanced, and the final war began. The first clash shook the heavens. Enemy dreadnoughts unleashed storms of plasma, tearing through the void. Cain's shield wall held, reptilian ships absorbing the fire with thick armor. Behind them, human frigates darted forward, striking engines and weak points. Insectoid swarms swirled around the Empire's carriers, cutting into their hulls with burning claws. Wolf warriors leaped from boarding pods, fighting hand-to-hand in the darkness of enemy corridors. Everywhere, chaos burned. Earth itself trembled as wreckage rained from the sky. Explosions lit the night like false suns. Millions watched from bunkers, hearing the thunder of war above their heads, and still, Cain's voice cut through the storm. Hold the line. Strike their hearts. Do not break. He moved like a commander born for this moment, guiding fleets of species who had once been enemies, now fighting as one. But the Empire did not yield. For every ship destroyed, 100 more pressed forward. For every victory, a dozen losses followed. Cain's fleet fought like fire, but the storm was endless. On Earth, Terran Command watched with cold eyes. He bleeds for us. One general whispered, "Yes." Another replied, his tone sharp, "But if he wins, he will rule us." Even now, as Cain fought to save their world, the leaders' fear of him grew. In secret, their betrayal deepened. They prepared their strike, waiting for the moment when Cain was most vulnerable. But Cain did not know this. His eyes were only on the Empire. He stood on his bridge, surrounded by fire, as the largest armada in history closed in. His fleet was battered, bleeding, still standing. This was not just a battle for Earth. This was a battle for the galaxy's future, and Cain knew the truth. He could not retreat, he could not surrender. He had only one choice: to fight until the stars themselves burned. The war had become fire and blood. Earth's skies burned red with falling wreckage. Oceans boiled where starships crashed. Cities shook as shockwaves from explosions tore across continents. Above, in orbit, the battle raged. On, Cain's fleet, human and alien, bound by desperation, fought against an empire that seemed endless. But now, the storm had reached its peak. The Empire's flagship had arrived, a massive dreadnought, slid into orbit, its shadow swallowed. Earth, its weapons glowed with the power to shatter worlds. At its heart waited the Emperor's hand. The Empire's most feared commander, the one who had overseen Cain's capture, the one who had broken millions of prisoners, the one who believed no species could resist the Empire. Now Cain would face him. On his bridge, Cain stood silent. His armor was scorched, his face carried fresh wounds, yet his eyes burned with something no weapon could kill. Resolve. Around him, his commanders waited. Dravik, the reptilian warrior, bared his fangs. This battle is not just for Earth. We fall, all free worlds fall, the insectoid queen whispered. Edema, then we do not fall. Cain's voice cut through the chaos, steady, unbroken. Prepare the charge. The fleet obeyed. Every ship, every fighter, every soldier, all eyes turned to the Empire's flagship. This was it, the last stand, the dreadnought. Opened fire, Beams of burning light speared through the void, tearing apart Kane's ships in seconds. Entire formations vanished in storms of fire. Still, the fleet pressed forward. Reptilian cruisers rammed enemy lines, exploding in blinding light. Human frigates screamed through gaps, unleashing missiles at close range. Insectoid swarms tore into enemy holes, their claws ripping steel apart. It was madness. It was slaughter. And yet, the Empire bled. For every Kane ship lost, an enemy Titan fell. For every sacrifice, another gap opened. Step by step, death by death. They forced their way toward the dreadnought. At last, Kane's flagship broke through. The Empire's Titan loomed before him, its guns still blazing. His crew waited for his command. Kane gave none. Instead, he walked to the hangar. His soldiers looked at him, confused. "Commander." Kane's voice was cold, steady. "This war does not end with fleets. It ends with me and him." Boarded a shuttle, Dravik tried to stop him. "Alone. You will die." Kane looked at him. "Not alone. Not anymore." And with that, he launched toward the Empire's heart. Inside the dreadnought, silence ruled. The halls were endless metal corridors, lit by the glow of strange energy. Elite soldiers of the Empire lined the passageways, their armor shining. Kane cut through them like fire. Every step, every strike was fury. Every fallen soldier marked his path deeper into the beast. At last, he reached the throne chamber. There he was, the Emperor's hand, tall, armored in black steel, his face hidden behind a mask. His voice echoed like thunder. "You should have died in the prison. You were nothing." Kane raised his blade. "I was nothing. But now, I am the voice of every world you've crushed." The chamber shook as the two clashed. Steel against steel, power against power. Sparks lit the dark. The Emperor's hand fought with the strength of a god. But Kane fought with the fury of a man who had lost everything, the fire of a man who refused to lose again. The battle raged, minutes felt like hours. Blades shattered, armor cracked, blood stained the steel floor. At last, Kane struck the final blow. His blade pierced the black mask. The Emperor's hand fell, his last words a whisper. "The Empire will never die." Kane stood, covered in blood, his chest rising and falling with rage and exhaustion. He looked up. Around him, the dreadnought trembled. Without its commander, the giant ship faltered. Across the battlefield, the Empire's fleets broke. Their order collapsing, Earth lived. The Empire burned. But victory came with a price. Kane's fleet was shattered. His allies lay dead across the stars. His world was saved, but broken, and on Earth, the leaders who had once betrayed him looked at him with fear. He had saved them, but he had also become something greater than them, a symbol, a legend, a threat. From the shadows of their bunkers, whispers began. He must not rule. Kane stood on the bridge once more, looking down at Earth, glowing in the light of survival. He had returned as a prisoner. He had fought as a commander. Now, he stood as something else. Not just a man, but a warning to the Empire, to Earth, to all who would come after. The last stand was not the end. It was the beginning.